For Hari Singh, Apollo wasn't just a building, it was his temple. This 40-story granite and steel data center, which controlled the city's critical infrastructure, such as the emergency power grid, main hospital records, and financial transactions, was a quiet, complex puzzle to Hari. Hari was about 68 years old. His back was slightly stooped, but his hands were tough, having gripped mops and buckets for decades. Nobody ever truly saw him. He was invisible. While the young tech team was absorbed in their high-speed, high-stress lives in the evening, Hari would enter the real world of the data center. The young employees, who stood in front of server racks discussing complex codes and protocols, simply saw Hari as the janitor. They didn't know that Hari had been cleaning this building since it was just an excavated pit. He had seen its foundation poured, and he knew the location of every pipeline, every air duct, and every old electrical panel by heart. He knew which floor tile was slightly loose and which emergency door was slightly misaligned. "Oh, Hari uncle, please don't sweep the dust near the fiber optic cables here." Sarah Chen, the young head of security, barely 28, had once snapped at him. Sarah's world was made of code, firewalls, and cloud security. Hari's world was made of copper wires, coolant fluids, and concrete. Tonight, Tuesday, was quiet as usual. It was 10:45 p.m. Hari was in the data hall on the 5th floor. This floor was mainly dedicated to an old banking system, installed 20 years ago, but now used only for backups. Hari watched the dust motes dancing in the air under the beam of his small, battery-powered torch. Suddenly, something changed. Hari felt the floor beneath him vibrating. It wasn't the usual hum that came from hundreds of running servers. It was a rhythmic and deep rumble, like a large animal suddenly fleeing in fear. Hari stopped near server rack C21 and paid attention. A quiet server, one he saw every day, was now making an unusually loud and high-pitched noise. Its usual blue LED lights began flashing rapidly, turning orange, then red, a pattern he had never witnessed before. Part 2. The Sleeper Virus. Wake Up on the 40th floor was the Network Operations Center, NOC, of the Apollo Data Center. This room was one of the most secure places in the world, filled with dozens of monitors, silent air conditioning, and Sarah Chen's anxious team. "Sarah! Look!" Vivek, a junior analyst, shouted. "The core banking server Iceberg has 98% CPU utilization. That's impossible. It should only be running at 2%. Sarah immediately sprang from her seat. "Check the firewall logs. Has there been an intrusion?" "No external intrusion, ma'am. It looks like it initiated from within." In the next 60 seconds, alarms blared throughout the NOC. The green lines on the monitors were replaced by red warning texts. "The system is trying to shut down." Another analyst cried out, "No, don't shut it down. It's a destruction loop." Sarah screamed, panic rising in her voice. "This isn't ordinary ransomware. This is Chimera. I've heard of it. It's a sleeper virus. It's been dormant for years, and now it's awake to annihilate our systems all at once." Chimera didn't just encrypt data. It was designed to completely wipe the data and corrupt the backup systems simultaneously. Its goal wasn't damage, but extinction. Sarah immediately started an emergency briefing. "Listen up. We have to isolate it. Cut all external connections immediately. Gas grid, hospitals, Federal Reserve links. Disconnect everything." Vivek tried, his hands sweating. "Ma'am, the virus is too smart. It's blocking our disconnect command. It has overridden our emergency protocols. It's in dark mode now." Another horrifying message flashed across the screen. "Chimera initializing data wipe sequence. 30 minutes remaining." "Good luck." Sarah clenched her fist. 30 minutes. We have to stop it in 30 minutes. If this code executes, it will cause a blackout and medical chaos for 50 million people in this region. This will be a national disaster. Part 3. When the digital world failed, Sarah and her team endured hell for the next 15 minutes. They threw every digital weapon they had at it. They tried to reverse engineer the firewall, trace the virus's command and control C2 server, and input the kill switch code. All in vain. The Chimera virus was a trap. It knew every rule of the digital world and had broken them all. As time ticked down, 21 minutes remaining, then 15 were, despair began to settle on the team's faces. "We can't do it," Vivek said, wiping sweat from his brow. "This virus is running in an air gap situation. It hid itself in an old, unused network topology that didn't show up in our current security audits. It's inside the system, and we can't track it digitally until it finishes its job." Sarah slammed her hand on the table. "So what do we do? Is there any physical connection we can sever? Something tied to this ancient network?" "No," replied Daniel, a senior engineer who was usually unflappable, but whose face was now ashen. 20 years ago, they built a gray network on the 5th floor, physically separate from the main system, but they digitally decommissioned it 10 years ago. Now it's just a ghost network, not even on our maps. "But if the virus is running on that network, there must be a physical connection," Sarah cried out, her voice now close to tears. "We have 10 minutes left. We need a hard stop." Just then, a slow knock came at the door. Hari Singh, with his cleaning trolley, was quietly standing behind the Nosi. "Excuse me, madam," Hari said in a calm voice. "It is very hot in here, and on the 5th floor, near rack C21, the switch with the white wire is making too much noise." Sarah whirled around. "Hari, what are you doing here? We told you this area is restricted." "Madam, the switch with the white wire, it was installed in 1999, Hari said, his eyes fixed on a distant point, as if viewing the building's blueprint in his mind. "That was the main junction for the gray network. Before they shut it down, they told me to continue cleaning around it." Sarah and Daniel exchanged a look. Daniel whispered, "The gray network. That switch with the white wire. It's Phantom Junction 5. It's not in our modern schematics, but if Hari is right..." Sarah looked at Hari, her eyes moving from disbelief to a frantic final hope. 8 minutes remained. "Hari," Sarah said quickly, "can you reach that switch? Do you know exactly where it is?" "Yes, madam," Hari replied. "I go to that room every night at 11 o'clock. It is behind A9 on the 5th floor, where the old battery backup units are kept." "But that room is locked," Daniel exclaimed. "No," Hari smiled faintly. "When they put the lock on, I noticed the door frame is slightly bent. I can open it with a proper push. But I only have 1 minute to get there." Sarah held her head. "All right, Hari, listen. You have to go inside, and you have to find that switch with the white wire and disconnect it. It's our only chance." Part 4. The race in the labyrinth. 7 minutes, 30 seconds remained. Sarah handed him a small intercom. "Hari, I'm with you on the radio. I can't see you, but I can hear you. Go." Hari abandoned his trolley and moved out of the Noki. He didn't head for the stairs. He pointed toward the building's old, rarely used service elevator, which went directly to the 5th floor. Sarah almost screamed into the intercom. "The service elevator is too slow. Take the stairs." "The stairs will take 10 minutes, Hari said calmly. "But this elevator can be run on manual override. I know where the wiring is." Hari quickly opened the elevator's control panel, pulled a few internal wires, and the elevator began to drop rapidly, bypassing every floor with dizzying speed. Minutes remained. He stepped out onto the 5th floor. The data hall was cold, but there was a faint smell of burning in the air. The C21 rack was now screaming, "Hari, where are you? Hurry!" Sarah's voice crackled through the intercom. "I'm near C21. I need to go left, to the old battery room." "The A9 exit." He moved swiftly. Hari's gait was no longer slow. It was precise and energetic, like a machine, as he navigated the narrow aisles between the racks. When he reached A9, the door was indeed locked. "It's locked, Hari. Come back. We'll try something else." Sarah's voice was filled with despair. "No, madam. There will be no other attempt." 4 minutes remaining. Hari pulled an old, sturdy pry bar from his waist, which he never kept separate from his trolley. He wedged it into the bent edge of the doorframe, held his breath, and pushed with all his might, with a loud crack. The lock broke. He was inside. The room was dark, only the emergency lights flickering dimly. The air was thick and foul, smelling of old batteries. "You're inside." "Where is the switch now?" Sarah shouted. "On the back wall, near an old ventilation shaft. It's here." Harry shone his torch directly onto a small, rusty metal box. This box had been installed by the first generation of Apollo engineers 20 years ago. A small label was stuck on the box: J5 Legacy Bypass. Several colorful wires emerged from this box, but one thick, shining white wire went straight into the box and then disappeared into the floor. "The white wire! That's it!" Sarah's voice showed a hint of relief. Minutes remained. "Hari, look. There are two switches on that box, one red and one black." "Which one?" Sarah asked, her voice steadying slightly. Hari reached out and touched the box. He could feel the roar of the servers in his ear. "The red one. The red one is for the junction. The black one is for power. If I cut the power, the whole floor will shut down, and the system will immediately delete the data. But if I only cut the junction, the gray network will be physically isolated from the main server, and the virus will die by itself." "Are you sure?" "Yes, madam. I know why they built it. It was for disaster recovery." 60 seconds remained. Disaster recovery. 60 seconds remained. "Hari, break it." "Now!" Sarah almost sobbed. Hari gripped the red switch with his hand. His fingers were tough, but he paused for a moment before pushing it. This wasn't just a switch. It was the switch for the lives of 50 million people and national security. Then, with all his strength, he pulled the red switch and tore it out. Part 5. The Silence and the Solution. The moment Hari broke the junction, there was a sharp crack, followed by a deep, satisfying silence. The C-21 rack, which had been screaming, instantly went quiet. The rhythmic vibration of the entire fifth floor abruptly ceased, like music suddenly stopping. Hari slumped where he stood, his breathing rapid. Sarah's voice came over the intercom, trembling. "Vivek! Daniel! Status?" Up in the knock, Vivek's voice was laced with disbelief. The timer has stopped, ma'am. It stopped at E01. Any data loss?" "No data loss." The virus's C2 connection was abruptly severed. "It's now just a dormant code." Throughout the NOC, quiet, collective gasps and sighs of relief echoed. Sarah leaned back in her chair, holding her head, her eyes teary. "Hari?" she whispered into the intercom. "Hari, are you all right?" "Yes, madam. The cleaning is done." Hari's voice was very faint, but carried an old satisfaction. The next day. When morning arrived, there was no breakdown at the Apollo data center. The emergency services never knew they were on the verge of a terrifying disaster. Sarah Chen, in her best suit, came down to the fifth floor to meet Hari. Hari was putting his trolley back together, his shoulder slightly aching. "Hari," Sarah said. You saved us." Hari smiled. "Madam, I clean this place every day. I know where the dirt is hidden, whether it's dust or an old wire." Sarah handed him a small old metal medallion inscribed with Apollo 1999. It was designed for the data center's first employees. "This is for you." "You are now our Chief Physical Integrity Officer," Sarah announced. "You won't just run the mop, you'll run the building. Your salary is now 10 times what it was." Hari looked at the medallion, then at his trolley. "No, madam, I will only clean. That is my job. But I can tell you where the wires go." Sarah smiled and hugged him. 6 months later, after the Chimera attack, Apollo renamed its security team. Defense, Digital and Physical. Hari Singh didn't give up his trolley, but he did get a new routine. Every morning, he would tour the entire data center with Sarah Chen. Hari would point out where the old ventilation shaft was too close to the main fiber line, or where moisture could compromise an old battery backup unit. One day, Sarah asked Hari, "Hari, how did you know the red switch was the right junction?" Hari smiled and replied, "Madam, when I was cleaning this building in 1999, I saw the engineer making a small J mark on the red switch while installing it. That engineer told me that JI stood for junction, and it would be used when all the digital world failed. Son, technology changes, but human insight and physical reality never do. He moved on with his trolley, gently touching the white-wired switch, which was now a historical artifact and Apollo's greatest defender.